It's a book revered by millions of faithful believers. Today, the Bible is still a source of fascination. So many mysteries surround biblical episodes full of legendary figures and extraordinary phenomena.
Just like that, the miracle happened. Loaves and fish multiplied.
No scientist has ever succeeded in reproducing an imprint like this one on the shroud.
In order to unlock the deepest secrets of the Holy Book, we must explore its sacred sites, from Jerusalem to Rome, from Turin to the Sea of Galilee. A journey to rediscover the essential texts and the epic tales that make up the Bible.
This is what it is, the presence of God here on the mountain.
This is the best place, probably in the world, to see the ministry of Jesus.
An extraordinary saga in mythical places with breathtaking landscapes. Based on texts found in the Bible itself, and thanks to the work of archaeologists, researchers, and religious believers, the most famous biblical characters spring to life. On these holy sites, the mysteries still surrounding them will be revealed. Among the greatest of these mysteries is an object which is mentioned over 250 times in the Bible, the Ark of the Covenant. It's Judaism's most sacred relic. It was God who requested that this gilt wooden box be built to hold the tablets of the law on which were inscribed the commandments, sealing the covenant between God and his people.
The Ark of the Covenant is the showpiece. In the space between the wings of the two cherubims, God is supposedly present.
What have we lost that we need the Ark? If we find the Ark, is that God?
Because the mythical box disappeared, leaving behind it a number of questions. What proof is there of its existence? What powers does the box hold? And above all, where is it now? We set out on the trail of the Ark of the Covenant from the Negev desert in Israel all the way to Jerusalem.
Is the Ark of the Covenant underneath the temple? It's very possible.
But also to Chartres in France, where the box might also be located.
It's apparently behind the left-hand wall or at the top of the steps on the left.
But the Ark of the Covenant is renowned for its formidable powers. Wouldn't it be better not to find this object as fascinating as it is frightening?
And the Lord said to Moses, "Write down these words, for in accordance with these words I have made a covenant with you and with Israel."
Our quest for the Ark of the Covenant starts at the place it first appeared, in the arid vastness of the desert. After freeing the Israelites from slavery in Egypt, the Bible recounts how Moses climbed Mount Sinai, where he received the 10 Commandments, as well as other laws for the Hebrews from God. These tablets of law were then placed in the Ark of the Covenant, a wooden chest made especially to hold them. It was a precious box, which would become Judaism's most sacred object.
In the Bible, it's a box which is in the book of Exodus, constructed by Moses, who receives divine instructions. And according to the book of Exodus, the ark is containing 2 tables of the law. So it's a container of the law. And on the ark you have gold, you have 2 cherubim, which are kind of protector angels. But the main idea is that the ark is a kind of a transportable sanctuary in which we have the tables of the law.
According to the Bible, Moses received the tablets at the top of the famous Mount Sinai. But the exact location of this sacred mountain still remains a mystery today.
Genesis, so truly a chance to be in the desert. You really see something that has been untouched, something that's very virgin, and really a place, I think, where dreams can happen.
Guide Mitch Sommer takes us to the place where he believes the real Mount Sinai is located. After several hours in a jeep through the rocky Negev desert in southern Israel on the Egyptian border, we reach the foot of Mount Har Karkom, which could be one of the candidates for being Mount Sinai.
The main point here is Mount Karkom is an option, if not the place, for Mount Sinai. The place where Moses will go up and bring the Torah down for the people of Israel.
What are the clues which could make us believe that we're actually on Mount Sinai? The first disconcerting element is at the foot of the mountain, an altar which strangely resembles the one that Moses built after having received the tablets.
It says that Moses will come and he will build an altar and he will put up 12 stones. And why is this important, 12? We know that we have 12 tribes of Israel. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Is it a coincidence? I don't know.
As we climb, there are more signs that this could be Mount Sinai. A bit higher up, our guide points out a cliff. During the winter solstice, an intense light shines through a gap, recalling the burning bush where God showed himself to Moses for the first time. According to the Bible, this divine apparition took place on this very mountain.
Even though it's a natural phenomenon, this is what it is, the presence of God here on the mountain.
But there's something even more fascinating. The mountain is covered in rock carvings, ancient petroglyphs. Some date back to 30,000 years BCE, which is a proof of intense religious activity.
We have camels, we have ibex, we have different animals. We have also lovely pictures of people, what looks like people like this, praying. It just shows a continuity of people coming here for either religious pilgrimage or whatever, and leaving their mark.
If Moses did indeed come here, he didn't choose this mountain by chance, but precisely because it was sacred. A petroglyph dating back several thousands of years seems to depict the 10 Commandments. This set of clues reassures our guide that we are very much on the mountain where the prophet received the tablets. After several hours walking, another perplexing sign awaits us at the summit. A small cleft in the rock catches Mitch Sommer's eye.
Moses was much smaller than me.
Someone lived here a very long time ago.
Some of the things that were found here was remnants of bones, food, maybe some jars holding some water. Evidence that someone at some point in time was here.
Carbon dating has revealed that the food remains date back to 800 years before the era of Moses. And yet the presence of this small cleft coincides with the story in the Bible. According to the Old Testament, Moses was forced to hide to avoid looking directly at God.
He said, "You will not be able to see my face, for no human can see me and live." God said, "Behold, there is a place near me. You may stand on the rock. And when my glory passes by, I shall place you in a cleft in the rock. I shall shield you with my hand until I have passed."
Believers are still moved by the memory of this meeting with Yahweh. It's the founding moment of the Hebrew people.
Moses was the great lawmaker. He was the one who brought the people together and turned them into a real nation, which had its own, what we would call today, constitution. This document was handed to Moses, according to the Bible, by God himself. God wrote the famous 10 Commandments on the tablets with his own finger.
Commandments such as "Thou shalt not kill," and "Thou shalt worship no other gods before me," became the religious and moral foundations of an entire people and civilization. It was these sacred writings that were placed in the Ark of the Covenant. But how can we be sure that the Hebrews did in fact pass by this mountain when fleeing Egypt? Several possible routes in this flight have been suggested, but there is no consensus. Two routes lead to Har Karkum, another one to the Jordanian border, and lastly, the official pilgrimage leads to St. Catherine's Monastery in Egypt. But is this the route that the Hebrews really took?
Nowadays, if you want to get to Mount Sinai, you're taken to St. Catherine's Monastery. A path has been built for pilgrims, and you can admire the magnificent sunrise behind the granite mountains. The problem with this location is that it's right at the southern tip of the Sinai Peninsula, and it's difficult to understand why those fleeing Egypt from the Nile Delta would come as far south as this. That's why archaeologists have tried to find other locations a bit further north. But unfortunately for the moment, no one can agree on one particular place.
A thick fog surrounds these ancient episodes recounted in the Old Testament. Archaeologists have not found definitive traces of a mass exodus from Egypt. Without archaeological traces of the Hebrews' flight and of Mount Sinai, what can we say about the Ark of the Covenant and its existence?
According to the Bible, the Ark was built at the time of Moses. The truth is that we really don't know if this episode actually took place. Maybe the Ark was in fact built much later, perhaps even centuries later, to commemorate a glorious past, a bit like a relic.
Nevertheless, the religious practices of neighboring civilizations could corroborate the existence of the Ark of the Covenant, because they also had similar types of portable shrines.
There's not so much doubt to have about the existence of the ark, because we may even speculate if there were not multiple arks, because what we see, especially in Egypt, you have like transportable shrines which you use for processions, but you can also take them to war, and where we have small statues of the protector gods. This, I think, is something very common in the ancient Near East.
We do see representations in the ancient Near East of statuettes of gods being transported in some sort of a box. This provides some sort of a support for the assumption that, after all, there had been, a sacred object in the Iron Age.
But how could a people in flight have built such an object in the desert? They would have needed wood to construct the chest and pure gold to cover it. According to the Bible, the Hebrews brought pure gold out of Egypt. But what about the acacia wood?
It's native. This is what they have. It's a very strong tree, so not only is it strong, it won't break, it also doesn't rot. They need something that will last through a journey.
After having built the sacred chest at the foot of Mount Sinai, the Bible tells how the children of Israel wandered the desert for 40 years. At each stage of the journey, the Ark of the Covenant guided them and gave them the strength to proceed towards the Promised Land. The Ark was at the head of the procession when they crossed the River Jordan, and also accompanied the Hebrews at the fall of Jericho.
The Bible recounts several episodes when the Ark is taken onto the battlefield. When victory occurred, it wasn't because the Israelites were the strongest or had the most powerful weapons. It was above all because God had granted them victory.
Then have them make a sanctuary for me, and I will dwell among them.
During their long journey, the Hebrews kept the Ark of the Covenant in a sacred tent called a tabernacle. It was the temporary home of God among his people. The Bible describes it with precision. The Ark was kept in the most sacred part of the tent, at the back. When they arrived in the Promised Land around 1300 to 1200 years BCE, the Hebrews settled in a place called Shiloh.
Shiloh was an important sanctuary In the beginning of the first millennium, in the beginning of the Iron Age, in the Bible, Shiloh is considered before Jerusalem as being the most important sanctuary. Archaeology has shown that Shiloh was not a city. It was really just a sanctuary, but an important one.
They stayed there for several centuries. It was the end of a long journey for the Ark of the Covenant. But how can we be sure that the tabernacle and the Ark of the Covenant did end up in the ancient city of Shiloh? To find out for sure, we've come to the official pilgrimage site of the renowned tent and the Ark of the Covenant. Located 40 kilometers north of Jerusalem on the West Bank, the huge archaeological park of Shiloh lies between vineyards and arid hillsides. We've come to meet the conference guide, Eliana Passentin. This devout believer intends to prove to us that the Ark of the Covenant was indeed here.
This is very old. This might be from the time of the judges. It's very thick. This could be what we're looking for. We've found thousands and thousands of pieces of pottery from the time of the tabernacle, which has helped us to indicate that this is definitely Shiloh.
The pottery shows that Shiloh was well and truly inhabited at the time of Moses' first descendants. And Eliana believes she has further proof that this is the site mentioned in the Bible. Among the mosaics, the archaeologists have uncovered a name.
We uncovered this entire floor in 2006, and it was a beautiful surprise to find Shiloh.
The name, engraved in ancient Greek from the 4th century CE, would seem to confirm that it is indeed Shiloh. But only a prestigious place of pilgrimage would have been able to house the Ark of the Covenant for so long. Is this the case for Shiloh? The answer can be found in the remains of a house from the tabernacle era.
We found a storeroom, storage rooms, with huge jugs that were uncovered here where the jugs were just standing. Why was it necessary to have so much storage? Maybe it was for the pilgrims that would come here 3 times a year. Maybe it was to store all the food for all these people that are going to come.
Shiloh was certainly a major spiritual center, maybe even the religious capital of the first Hebrews. So a likely place to house an object such as the Ark. This is why dig after dig has taken place here to try and find the slightest evidence of the Ark of the Covenant and the sacred tent. However, a temporary shelter would not leave much of a mark. Even its position is disputed. But Eliana Passentin is convinced that the sacred tent stood at the foot of the hill.
But what's fascinating is the direction. The direction was east to west. The Holy of Holies that housed the Ark of the Covenant was in the west. So does this make sense that there's a huge plateau with the exact width, more than the length, and the perfect alignment of direction? As someone who believes in the Bible, it's very exciting for me. Just to walk into Shiloh and to know that this is the place of the tabernacle.
But this location is contested by archaeologists.
I think it was located on top of the hill because of the tradition in the ancient Near East that temples were usually constructed, at the top of the site. And when you look at archaeology, there's no reason to argue that there was a portable tent. There was a temple. There was, the tradition of this country.
It's a holy place whose shape and position raise questions, which means that it's difficult to say where precisely the Ark of the Covenant was located. What we can be sure of, thanks to archaeology, is that Shiloh was devastated by a fire in 1050 BCE. a date which corresponds in the Bible to a battle lost by the Hebrews against their sworn enemies, the Philistines.
The Philistines were enemies of Israel from the 10th century to the 8th, 7th century. And it's possible that in the 8th century, there was a king from the north, Jeroboam II, who was a quite important king and a quite powerful king. And it's possible that the ark story that tells how the ark came back from the Philistine land was a way to show the superiority of Israel against the Philistines. It's a way also to show that the God of Israel is stronger than the gods of the Philistines.
It was a horrific battle, in the course of which the Hebrews saw the Ark of the Covenant captured. After having destroyed Shiloh, the Philistines carried off the sacred wooden chest.
The Lord struck him down because he had put his hand on the ark.
The Philistines were proud of having taken the sacred chest of the Hebrews and placed it in the city of Ashdod. However, they were soon eager to return this treasure to the Israelites, as it only brought calamity upon them.
The Philistines had the ark, and they placed it in the temples dedicated to their god Dagon. And the next day, when they returned, the statue of Dagon had collapsed. And straight after, the Philistines were afflicted with a whole host of diseases, plagues, and tumors. They quickly understood that it was the ark which had brought them bad luck.
And the Philistines are so afraid that they say the ark has to be given back to the Israelites.
The Philistines decided to get rid of the Ark of the Covenant. But the power of the object hadn't stopped manifesting itself. The Bible tells the story of a man who was struck by lightning when holding the ark up to stop it falling to the ground.
When someone was in contact with the Ark of the Covenant, they were closer to God. So it was both an object of fascination, but also, to a certain degree, a dangerous, disconcerting object.
This is all, in a way, coming out of speculations. Why is the ark so important? So people started to speculate that maybe there is some divine power in the ark, and then it was rationalized. People would say, okay, it's not divine, but there's still... And then you had even very strange thing that the ark is something that comes from extraterrestrials and that you can communicate with the universe through the ark. But these are all things that are not really related to the Hebrew Bible.
But where did the ark's powers come from? A surprising theory came to light at the beginning of the 20th century. The Ark of the Covenant was, in fact, an electric capacitor. Scientists apparently proved it, starting with the pioneer of the alternating current, the brilliant American physicist Nikola Tesla. Moses was undoubtedly a practical and skillful electrician, far in advance of his time. Let's look a bit closer at how the Ark of the Covenant was made. According to the Bible, it was a large wooden chest covered in pure gold on both the outside and the inside. Why was it covered in gold on the inside when it was not going to be visible? The idea was, of course, to surround the divine presence with gold. But was there another reason? The chest was made up of a layer of electricity-conducting gold, then a layer of insulating wood, then another layer of conducting gold, a structure that resembles a capacitor. And so, did the sacred box work as an electrical capacitor? To test this theory, we go to the prestigious Museum of Arts and Crafts in Paris. Between the first aeroplanes and historical electrostatic machines, we meet up with Chloe Portier, a science facilitator. She's going to show us the forerunner of the electrical capacitor, invented in the 18th century, the Leyden jar.
This jar is made up a bit like a sandwich. So inside there's metal, which is the conductor, but the jar is made of glass, and glass is an insulator. However, around the jar, there's also aluminium, which is a conductor. So there's a conductor inside, insulation around that, and then another layer of conductor.
In terms of physics, it's the same structure as the Ark of the Covenant. Conductor, insulator, conductor. But how is the Leyden jar charged with electricity?
When I turn the handle, I'm generating friction and therefore bringing about an electrostatic current.
We can see that electricity can be produced by friction. It's a phenomenon which occurs in everyday life. Did the same thing happen with the Ark? As it happens, the chest is often depicted covered in a material which could have caused friction with the gilt exterior. So it's easy to imagine that the chest was charged with electricity. But was there a risk of getting an electric shock when touching it?
I'm creating an electric circuit, and this electricity, which is on the outside, will pass through my body to reach the conductor part on the outside of the jar. So I get an electric shock. We'll do the same thing with the metal clamp, which will connect the parts as I did with my hands, and you'll be able to see a tiny spark, which is the electric discharge.
In fact, the discharge occurs when the interior and exterior of the Leyden jar are touching. To continue the comparison with the Ark, one would have had to open the chest and touch the interior and exterior at the same time to get an electric shock. Another possibility would be if someone touched the sacred chest barefoot, thus connecting the conductive ground to the Ark. Of course, we're lacking a lot of information about how the Ark of the Covenant was built and used to be able to test the theory of an electric Ark. But the idea has entered into popular culture. We can see it in Steven Spielberg's cult film, Raiders of the Lost Ark, as well as in the French historical cartoon series, Il était une fois les découvreurs.
Allons-y doucement.
Of course, one should always resist the temptation to find scientific explanations for the prodigious or miraculous events that are found in the Bible, because we'd be taking God out of the equation, whereas the whole point of this object, the Ark, was on the contrary, to embody, to symbolize the divine presence.
The Ark remained at Kiryath Jearim a long time.
The Ark of the Covenant was returned to the Hebrews, who placed it on top of a hill situated 12 kilometers from Jerusalem at Kiryath Jearim.
Strangely enough, the Ark is not coming back to Shiloh. She's coming first to a place that is called Kiryath Jearim, where they construct a kind of a sanctuary for the Ark.
In this quiet, wooded area, there is a church called Our Lady of the Ark of the Covenant. This is of interest to those who wish to know more about the sacred chest, like archaeologist Naama Walzer. She's greeted by Sister Valerie, one of the French nuns who live in the monastery.
Who are on pilgrimage, people who are coming to... It is where the Ark of the Covenant was for about 20 or more years, according to whom you read.
The Bible clearly indicates that the Ark of the Covenant was kept here for about 20 years in the 10th century BCE, before being taken to Jerusalem. But what if the Ark had stayed here much longer than that? The archaeologist shows us that the site is much larger than suggested in the Bible. Naama took part in a huge excavation program from 2017 to 2019. It wasn't just the church's name that drew the archaeologists here, but the surprising shape of the hill, too.
You look up into this fabulous hill, you'll see that there's something off with it. It doesn't look as naturally shaped as the other hills around. And that was the first clue that something might be hidden under these modern terraces.
To test this, the archaeologists used a technique which allows a better perception of volumes and contours. Aerial photogrammetry.
So this is done with a drone, and you can kind of see the podium or the rectangle, but not very clearly. And when I look at my DEM, it's much clearer that the top of this hill is an artificial podium.
Based on the results of the photogrammetry, the archaeologists started digging in order to find the foundations of the podium, and they eventually found it.
So the big wall is behind, and then I dug a long trench here as well. So we were really excited to find the top of it. It's really wide.
The archaeologists had just uncovered a huge 3-meter wide wall. It extended over dozens of meters, surrounding the top of the hill.
So a corner should be actually positioned right here.
This incredible discovery demonstrated the full significance of Kiryath Jearim. What was the purpose of this site? And above all, could it have housed the Ark of the Covenant?
There are two hypotheses. Either this wall was just a city wall, nothing more than that, or the wall could have been surrounding a sort of podium for a sanctuary. If so, the sanctuary would have been gigantic, bigger than the temple in Jerusalem and all the other temples in the region.
If it was indeed an important temple, is it then possible that the Ark of the Covenant was kept here? But for how long? The Bible says 20 years, but was it for longer? We meet up again with Nama Walzer at the University of Tel Aviv. To put a date on the site, this pottery expert has carefully studied the numerous pieces found at Kiryath Jearim.
Usually we see the lips or the shoulder.
And her conclusion is definitive.
The site was definitely constructed in the Iron Age. Anywhere between 900, 800 BC.
The site dates back to the 8th century BCE. And that could put into question the entire official history of the Ark.
The Bible is very clear. They tell you that David is the one who takes the Ark from Kiryath Jearim to Jerusalem. So you're in the 10th century. I look at the results at Kiryath Jearim. It becomes a monumental, wonderful place in the 8th century. So in the late 8th century, according to me, it is taken to Jerusalem.
That means that the Ark of the Covenant did not arrive in the 10th century BCE, but 200 years later. Whatever the case, the Ark still ended up in Jerusalem, becoming the symbol of a unified kingdom. The fate of the sacred chest was inextricably linked to the people of Israel.
Put the sacred ark in the temple that Solomon, son of David, king of Israel, built.
The Wailing Wall in Jerusalem is the Jews' most sacred site. There's an intense atmosphere of religious fervor. Just like in synagogues around the world, holy texts from the Old Testament are kept in a chest, in the same way that the Ark of the Covenant housed the Word of God. For historian Yael Escogido, the memory of the Ark of the Covenant is stronger here than anywhere else.
It's even more symbolic to find the Holy Ark here, since we're extremely close to its original location on Temple Mount.
According to the Bible, the Ark of the Covenant was to be found on the hill behind the Wailing Wall, at the top of Temple Mount. A sacred hill which today has a magnificent mosque topped with a golden dome, the Dome of the Rock.
What we can see today is the Dome of the Rock. It's considered as the spot where the world began, where the creation of the world began.
The Bible says that 3,000 years ago, the great King Solomon built a temple on the place where the dome now stands, specially to house the Ark of the Covenant. The temple was divided into several parts, the most sacred of which is called the Holy of Holies, in the west of the building. This is where the Ark was kept.
It's like Russian dolls. There was a first perimeter, which everyone could visit. Then there was an enclosure within that, and another one inside again. So in the Bible, the most central place was called the Holy of Holies, and that's where the Ark of the Covenant was housed.
Solomon's temple has disappeared, leaving no trace. It was destroyed by the Babylonians in 586 BCE. Was the Ark of the Covenant burnt in the flames? Or carried away by the Babylonians? Both are very possible.
When the temple is destroyed by the Babylonians, we don't know what happened to the Ark. There's one text in the book of Jeremiah which is saying you should not anymore reconstruct the Ark because there's no need, because the whole city of Jerusalem will be the sanctuary of the Lord, of the God of Israel. So you can see from this text that there were some polemics, should we or not reconstruct the Ark? So we have to suppose that the first Ark in the Temple of Jerusalem was either destroyed during the takeover of Jerusalem, or was brought as booty with other things to Babylonia, but then we don't know really what happened.
The destruction of the temple was such a shock that in the 1st century CE, a new, even more imposing temple was built on the same spot. Yael Escogido takes us to see the remains of the temple's surrounding wall, so that we might get even closer to the Holy of Holies, the place where the Ark of the Covenant was kept. Since the city of Jerusalem was built in successive layers, we have to go underground to find these ancient ruins.
So as we go down these steps, we're going down into the Jerusalem of 2,000 years ago.
Going through these tunnels enables us to go back in time and take us to the Holy of Holies of King Solomon's temple. The closer we get, the more we can feel the religious devotion.
People come here and leave vows and prayers on bits of paper, etc. And the closer we get to the Holy of Holies, the more bits of paper there are.
According to tradition, the Ark of the Covenant was to be found in the most sacred part of the Temple of Solomon, on just the other side of this wall. And what if the Ark was still there, under Temple Mount?
Is it under Temple Mount? It's quite possible.
In a much commented upon passage of the Bible, it suggests that a king who ruled the kingdom of Israel in the 7th century BCE buried the Ark of the Covenant, with the aim perhaps of protecting it.
What we do know is that in the 7th century BCE, King Josiah gave us the last testimony of the Holy Ark. He asked for it to be buried underneath Temple Mount.
In the book of Maccabees, it said that the prophet Jeremiah did hide the ark under a mountain. But apparently this is not the mount of the temple. This is more the Mount Nebo, where Moses was buried. Some tradition would speculate and say, okay, it's a mount, but maybe Nebo is not really, it's just to bring the people into error. So the real place would be under the temple. And this is the idea, of course, that the temple need to be reconstructed. And if we reconstruct the temple, we will have the ark also. The ark did not disappear, it's under the temple, it's just waiting for the reconstruction of the temple. So here you see also the political use of these lost ark traditions in order to claim that we need a third temple.
Some people remain convinced that the Ark is still buried somewhere in the maze of ruins below Temple Mount. But it's impossible to verify this theory because the Dome of the Rock on Temple Mount is itself a sacred site for Muslims. But there are other traditions indicating that the Ark left Jerusalem to end up thousands of kilometers from here.
There had never been such spices as those the Queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon.
We set off for the Basilica of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, the sanctuary which houses the empty tomb of Jesus. Down a small alleyway behind the basilica lies a fresh lead to the Ark of the Covenant. An unexpected Ethiopian monastery is hidden away on the roof of the Holy Sepulchre.
Be careful of the door. You have to bend down. You have to bow your head when you enter the village of the Ethiopians.
David Shapira, a former rabbi, now a guide, shows us around this hidden monastery. Even if these Ethiopians are fully Christian, they nevertheless have their own holy days, like this one today. In what way were the Ethiopians connected with the Ark of the Covenant? In the Bible, it all stems from the visit to Jerusalem of the legendary Queen of Sheba. According to Ethiopian accounts, this great queen of antiquity had a love affair with Solomon, the king who had the temple built for the Ark.
Solomon was so powerful, so wise, full of wisdom, that the Queen of Sheba, which the Ethiopian identify, of course, with Ethiopia, came to visit Solomon.
When the Queen of Sheba arrived at Solomon's palace in Jerusalem, the king was dazzled by the queen's beauty and fell in love with her. Events took their natural course, and sometime later the Queen of Sheba returned to her country pregnant with a son, Menelik, who went on to found the Ethiopian Empire.
So both Ethiopian Jews and Christians believe themselves to be descendants of Menelik, a key figure in the history of the Ark of the Covenant. At the age of 13, Menelik wanted to meet his father and decided to go to Jerusalem.
According to legend, he stayed 6 months in Jerusalem, and Solomon requested that Menelik stay alongside him, even though Menelik wanted to return to Ethiopia.
Solomon gave him a lot of presents and also a lot of young people in order to accompany him. And one of these young people said, if we go there, we need to take the ark with us.
As Menelik was about to leave, King Solomon gifted his son a replica of the Holy Ark. But the Ethiopian texts of reference recount that the high priest of Israel exchanged the gift for the real Ark of the Covenant. And this is how Menelik brought back the Ark to Ethiopia and kept it in a chapel in Axum in the north of the country.
When you go to Ethiopia, they tell you that the Ark of the Covenant is still there, that it's guarded day and night. They won't let you see it, but it's very carefully looked after. It's a really lovely story.
This is not in the Bible, but this is a very interesting reception of the Ark story in the Bible, and a good observation, because in the Bible, after Solomon put the Ark in the temple, there's no mention anymore of the Ark in the Book of Kings, so you can say, maybe it was already disappearing before the Babylonian destroyed the temple.
No one is allowed to see the Ark of the Covenant apart from the person guarding it. So it's impossible to check its authenticity. Moreover, according to the Bible, the holy chest was still present in Jerusalem in the 7th century BCE, well after King Solomon's reign. So it couldn't have gone to Ethiopia. If the Ark of the Covenant stayed in Jerusalem, what could have happened to it? Its fate could be linked to that of the Knights Templar, a military and religious order created in the 12th century, whose headquarters was situated on Temple Mount.
The Ark of the Covenant, like all relics, fascinated the Western powers at the time of the Crusades. And the Crusaders, the Templars, and everyone, in fact, wanted to get their hands on a whole range of relics. The Templars were particularly interested in Solomon's temple, not just the building itself and its architecture, but also the furnishings. And so logically, the Ark, which aroused a lot of curiosity.
And what if the Templars found the Ark of the Covenant and brought it back to France, and more specifically, to Chartres?
You will give birth to a son, and you are to call him Jesus.
Chartres Cathedral is both overwhelming in size and beauty, and one of the most majestic in Europe. Its deep blue stained glass windows are world-renowned. The building dates back to the beginning of the 13th century, a period thought of as the golden age of the Templars. This is how the most famous legend of the cathedral was born, as told by Gilles Fresson.
The Templars, based in Jerusalem on Temple Mount, after some excavation finally found the Ark of the Covenant. They decided to take it back to the west, to Chartres. And the Ark of the Covenant was ultimately hidden away under Chartres Cathedral.
Gilles Fresson takes us to the door which is the key to the mystery, the famous North Door. On a pillar, you can see the story of the Ark of the Covenant carved with great finesse.
It's remarkable. Representations of the Ark of the Covenant in the art of the Middle Ages are extremely rare.
Why was the story of the Ark depicted in such detailed fashion? Was it because it was housed here in Chartres? This pillar is the first baffling clue, but it's the Latin inscriptions underneath the fresco that really catch the eye.
Hic amititor arca sederis, which could be translated as, here the Ark of the Covenant was abandoned, or was lost.
The phrase could mean that the Ark of the Covenant was lost for the Hebrews, unless it means that it was lost here in Chartres. That's all it took to create the legend. But where exactly would the Templars have hidden it? We meet up with guide Claire Barbier, who is going to take us down into the cathedral's famous crypt. According to the legend, the Templars hid the Ark of the Covenant in the ruins of the former cathedral, built centuries earlier.
If the Ark of the Covenant is anywhere in France, in particular in Chartres, this is where it would be, behind this wall and under the cathedral nave. This whole part has not yet been excavated by archaeologists, so the big mystery remains.
But the idea of hiding such a sacred object as the Ark of the Covenant goes totally against the spirit of the Middle Ages, which organized the worship of relics and put them on display. So there's little chance that the Ark of the Covenant is really buried in Chartres. But it could be found here in another form. Looking more closely at the cathedral, there are numerous references to Solomon's Temple, the home of the Ark.
The choir of the cathedral was definitely designed to resemble the Holy of Holies of Solomon's Temple. And that's also why this is the biggest choir, in terms of surface area, of all France's cathedrals.
On the stained glass windows, there are two columns like those at the entrance of Solomon's Temple. And if the cathedral is like the temple in Jerusalem, it must also have within it the Ark of the Covenant.
In the Middle Ages, in the equivalent of the Holy of Holies of Solomon's Temple, there was a reliquary in the shape of the Ark, in which the famous relic of the veil of the Virgin Mary was kept.
Today, Mary's veil is still kept at the back of the cathedral, in a reliquary surrounded by cherubim, in a direct reference to the Ark of the Covenant. Symbolically, Mary took the place of the Ark, in the sense that she was the one who carried Jesus in her womb.
In the Ark of the Covenant of the Old Testament, Moses placed the Word of God, the commandments, inside. Mary held within her the Word of the living God, Jesus. Mary was the new Ark of the Covenant.
Chartres Cathedral shows how the Christians adopted the entire symbolism of the Ark of the Covenant. For them, as for the Jews, it embodies the mysterious presence of God amongst mortals. The Ark, which is still waiting to be found, is nevertheless omnipresent.